what is it about triathlons and endurance athletes and just those kind of things, whether it's Ironmans or whatever it is, like what is it about those kind of sports that just get you out of bed and just make you want to do it? Because it's a lot of stuff that you hate, I assume, to get to it.
Yeah, progression. And I think you need to stick with something long enough that you see progression. Obviously, the first time you go out and run or ride a mountain bike, like you're probably going to be pretty frustrated if you're going with others that are really good. You're going to be like, how the hell are you so good? And I'm so bad at this. But when you stick with something long enough and you start to see progression within it, I think that's what fuels many of us to continue doing it. Like right now, I'm deep in CrossFit because I'm seeing progression in strength training. And I got to a place in triathlon where in the beginning, it kind of sucked because I couldn't swim and I wasn't running all that fast and I wasn't biking all that fast. But, about a year in, I started seeing, this curve of progression. And that really fueled the journey from doing a sprint distance triathlon to an Olympic distance triathlon to a half Ironman, telling my girlfriend at the time that I would never do that again after that first half Ironman. And then 30 minutes later, signing up for a full Ironman the next year, doing that first full Ironman, not being able to walk for a week, and then wanting to qualify for Kona. And it was just this, curve of progression. But then I got to a point where the progression wasn't very much anymore. And, to eke out just a little bit, I had to do so much more. And I lost my passion for it because it was so hard to continue progressing. So then I started as kind of a rookie again in CrossFit. And, now I'm at this place about 5 years into seriously training for CrossFit where I'm still seeing progression. It's slowing down, but I've gotten to a very high level at CrossFit. And just like I got to the World Championships in Ironman, I want to get to the CrossFit Games in CrossFit. So I think there's this blend of progression, this goal kind of at the end of the tunnel. And once we reach a world-class goal, we understand the formula to reach another world-class goal. So I like having those goals like off in the distance. So I'm training for something. But I think many give up before they get to that point of really seeing progression because it is frustrating. Your first 6 months, if you're a weightlifter and you start running, like you're going to be really frustrated with it. And if you're a weightlifter or the high level CrossFit athlete that doesn't run much and you want to do your first marathon, you're going to be frustrated for the first 6 months because you've taken something really far in one capacity, but you've probably neglected some other capacities because you are so singularly focused on that one thing. But yeah, give it 6 months. That's a big thing I preach is like doing something long enough that you can start to see that progression and you can get into a flow state with it.
I think there's a lot of invisible progress when it comes to that. At least that's the kind of framing I like to see it. Is like you don't notice that you're progressing. I know when you first got started, you hired a coach that was you kind of aesthetically looked better then, so it was kind of weird to see him progressing faster and in the longer races and everything. You had to slow down to speed up was kind of like the mentality that you took on from him. How was it kind of fighting your ego during that time and kind of allowing yourself to slow down? Because I think for anyone, especially getting into running, it is the most difficult thing is like just telling yourself like you have to slow down, it, but then you still just push yourself harder anyway.
Yeah, I mean, endurance is all about durability and an aerobic engine. It's not really about fitness. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I would consider myself to be very fit right now because I'm strong, I'm anaerobically fit. I could run a mile pretty fast, but I don't have the same durability and aerobic engine that I had during the Ironman years. And those are very specific to compounding consistencies. If you want to be good at Ironman, if you want to be good at marathon, ultra marathon, it really comes down to volume. And in order to put in that type of volume, you need to back off on the pace. So my story is I was running most of my runs before triathlon, just before triathlon, at like a 650 to 720 pace. And I could only run about 5 or 6 miles at that pace because I was going at a very high heart rate. I was going at like a 160 to 170 heart rate with my max heart rate at that time being about 180. So they were all hard efforts. And I was coming from a CrossFit type training background. I had a personal trainer 2007 to 2010. And my personal trainer had me doing CrossFit type workouts before I even knew CrossFit was a thing. So, going into triathlon, I'm like, okay, I just got to go hard. Every effort is hard. That's how I've progressed in the gym. So that's how I'll progress in triathlon. And after about a year and a half of doing these sprint triathlons every Wednesday night that I was winning, but towards the end of that 1.5 year period, this guy, Mike Corona, would beat me in any like Olympic distance or half Ironman races. And, at that time I had a six pack. Like I was pretty ripped by 30, 31 from doing these, weightlifting and CrossFit type workouts. And he didn't look nearly as fit or ripped as I did. And I'm like, how is he beating me? I don't understand. So he's the one who told me that I had to slow down to speed up. And I just couldn't fathom that. I'm like, I'm going so hard all the time. Like, why am I not faster than you? And he's like, because I'm doing more volume and I'm going slower than you. And I'm like, okay. So it took him 3 or 4 months to convince me to slow my running pace down. And at the time, he wanted me to do all of my runs under a 140 heart rate. And that was about an 830 pace for me, which didn't feel hard because I was used to running, low seven pace.
Mm.
So after a few months, finally listened to him because he threatened to fire me if I didn't, and start doing my runs at this 830 pace. And sure enough, it allows me to stack volume. Instead of running 30 miles a week, I can run 50 miles a week and 60 miles a week. So I was able to do longer runs, more consistent runs. And, I started to build the durability and the aerobic engine I needed to run long distances and not break down. So fast forward 4 years of doing that type of training, I went from an 830 pace to about a 625 pace for 20 plus miles at a 129 heart rate. And I did very, very little threshold training, very little fast running. The majority of my running, 85 to 90% of my running was done in that 130 to 140 heart rate zone. And again, it just allowed me to stack miles, build durability, build that aerobic engine, get really efficient with oxygen. And, over time, I got faster at long distances.